Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. We pack it with surprising facts and, well, just enough humor to keep you hooked. Today we're diving deep into something that definitely keeps medical device manufacturers up at night, navigating CE Class AIA certification for the European market. If you're looking to cut through the noise, get straight to the actionable insights, and maybe not feel totally overwhelmed, then yeah, you are in the right place. And the stakes here are honestly immense. Did you know over 30% of medical device certification delays, they stem from common, often pretty preventable regulatory oversights? That can cost companies months, seriously, months of lost revenue, not to mention major compliance setbacks.
It really is remarkable how often these critical missteps happen within the EU medical device regulation, the MDR 21-745. They lead to costly delays, sometimes outright audit failures, or even denial of market access altogether. From a strategic view, getting this right isn't just about, ticking boxes. It's absolutely fundamental to getting vital medical tech to patients who really need them.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is crystal clear. We're going to unpack the 7 most common mistakes companies make when they're applying for that CE Class IIa certification. And crucially, we'll give you specific, actionable insights on how you can avoid them. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
All right, let's unpack this first common pitfall then. Mistake number 1. Fundamentally misunderstanding the CE Class IIa certification requirements. It's often seen as a sort of generic one-size-fits-all checklist you just tick off. But that seems like a really dangerous oversimplification.
Oh, absolutely. It is. CE marking requirements, they vary significantly based on the device's classification and its inherent risk level.
Yeah.
For Class IIa devices specifically, you're not just signing off on some general safety declaration. No.
That-
These need a rigorous conformity assessment by a notified body. And manufacturers, you have to demonstrate safety and performance, not just at launch, but across the entire product lifecycle. What's often missed here is just the sheer depth of scrutiny involved. It goes way beyond a superficial review.
Okay, so beyond just reading the MDR text, what's the real key to getting granular, to really understanding these rules properly?
Well, beyond just reading the regulation itself, you have to grasp the nuances of MDR 21.2 and 745, particularly how different notified bodies might interpret certain, let's say, gray areas. And critically, you need to consult with regulatory experts, people who don't just live and breathe these details, but who have direct, hands-on experience with multiple notified bodies. They can offer insights into specific methods or, common areas they focus on. That kind of insight, it's gold.
Right. Even if you think you've got the general requirements down, a seemingly simple misstep can cause massive headaches. And that brings us right to mistake number 2. Incorrect product classification. It sounds so basic, doesn't it? But getting this wrong can significantly delay your CE certification, maybe even halt your EU market access completely. You end up on the wrong conformity assessment path, missing crucial documents, facing extra scrutiny before you even really start.
Yeah, exactly. And from a broader view, classification isn't just a label. It directly dictates your entire conformity assessment route. It determines the documentation needed, the level of notified body involvement, everything. Common errors. Oh, making assumptions without directly checking the MDR classification rules. That's a big one. Or mislabeling a Class IIa device as Class I, fewer requirements, or maybe Class IB, which means more stringent ones. Both are bad. For practical guidance, you really need to look at MDCG 2021-24. It's a key guidance document from the Medical Device Coordination Group. It specifically clarifies how to apply those complex MDR classification rules. Super helpful.
So how can companies actually avoid this really fundamental misstep? How do you make sure you get it right from day one?
The primary solution: refer directly to MDR Annex 8 for the classification rules themselves. That's your starting point. Then use that MDCG 2021-24 document for the crucial practical guidance. And to truly nail it down, to mitigate that risk, always consult a notified body or regulatory specialist early on. Validate your classification. Don't guess.
Okay, makes sense. Now, mistake number 3. This one's all about the foundation. Incomplete or poorly organized technical documentation. This technical file, as it's called, it's the absolute bedrock of your CE application. And it's actually surprising how many companies stumble here. They fail to compile complete documentation, or it's just not well structured, leads directly to rejections, significant delays. And honestly, this is probably one of the biggest reasons behind that 30% delay figure we mentioned earlier. A sloppy technical file can just unravel everything.
That's absolutely right. It's not just like, a pile of papers you submit once. Under MDR Annex 2 and 30, this documentation is a living document. It has to be kept up to date throughout the device lifecycle. It needs to clearly lay out your device, description, specifications, intended purpose, design drawings, all of it. You also need robust risk management documentation. That means showing your risk analysis and mitigation according to ISO 14971. That's the international standard for medical device risk management, covers identification, control, everything. A thorough clinical evaluation report, the CER, absolutely essential. Needs your benefit risk analysis, all supporting clinical data, details on manufacturing, product verification, quality controls critical. And finally, complete labeling and instructions for use, or IFU. Packaging, symbols, usage details, all compliant with MDR guidelines.
So, okay, beyond just having a basic checklist, what's a more forward-thinking way to manage this potential mountain of documentation?
Well, instead of just a static checklist, think about using an interactive, maybe cross-reference system for your technical file, something that links the requirements directly to the evidence. This makes updates and responding to audits just far more efficient than static documents. This kind of proactive, maybe digital approach can prevent a lot of common rejections. And remember, perform regular internal audits yourself. Make sure you're staying compliant.
Right. Now, here's one that often catches companies out, especially those successful in the U.S. Mistake number 4. Assuming FDA approval somehow equates to CE certification. Is that really such a common pitfall?
Oh, incredibly common, yes. I remember a specific case, a U.S. manufacturer of orthopedic implants. They had FDA 510K clearance. They basically assumed their existing technical file would be fine for EU MDR. Just submit the same stuff. They ended up facing a 6-month delay. Why? Because their clinical evaluation completely lacked the rigorous data MDR demands, particularly data regarding European patient populations, and also their post-market surveillance obligations weren't robust enough. Think of it like this. FDA often is about proving your new product is substantially equivalent to something already on the market, like proving a new car model is similar enough to last year's. MDR, especially for Class IIa, is much more about proving your car is inherently safe and performs reliably under all conditions, from design right through to when it's eventually scrapped. Regardless of other cars, it's a fundamental shift, from compare and contrast to prove and sustain ongoing safety. So yeah, FDA is primarily rule-based. MDR is inherently risk-based. FDA focuses on predicate devices. MDR emphasizes clinical evidence and that whole life cycle safety aspect. And crucially, their post-market surveillance requirements. Very different. Significantly different.
That makes perfect sense. But I'm curious, say you have a device that's been on the U.S. market for years, maybe with a great safety record. Is there any way to leverage that existing data effectively for MDR? Or is it truly like starting over for the EU?
It's not a complete restart, no. But you definitely cannot just reuse FDA submissions without significant adaptation. That's the key word, adaptation. You can certainly leverage some underlying data, clinical results, preclinical tests, sure. But the framing of that data, the analysis, it has to be specifically tailored to meet the EU MDR requirements. That means focusing on life cycle safety, considering European patient populations explicitly. So the advice is clear. Treat CE certification and FDA approval as distinct regulatory pathways. Tailor your documentation. Don't just copy-paste.
Okay, let's talk about mistake number 5, an inadequate clinical evaluation report, or CER. You mentioned it just now. A weak or outdated CER seems like a really critical barrier to getting CE approval. MDR mandates comprehensive, evidence-based clinical evaluations for all Class IIa devices. This sounds absolutely non-negotiable.
Yeah, it is non-negotiable. I mean, what's fascinating is how often companies stumble on the CER. Common pitfalls. Failing to adequately justify equivalence if you're claiming against another device. That needs solid proof. Having incomplete literature reviews, or maybe they're just outdated, and simply not complying with the specifics in MDR Annex 14th and also MedDev Div 2.71 Reverend 4. That MedDev E guidance. It's the key European document that meticulously defines the scope and content for your clinical evaluation. You can't ignore it. You really can't just slap something together and hope for the best.
So beyond just including the required sections, what's the secret then? How do you make sure your CER is genuinely robust and, well, audit-proof?
Okay, a truly robust CER needs a few things. A thorough benefit risk analysis, obviously. A really comprehensive literature review, systematic and documented. And solid clinical data relevant to your device and its intended use. Now, if you're claiming equivalence to another device, those claims have to be backed by actual access to its technical documentation. Just public data usually isn't enough. And vitally, make sure clinical experts, people who actually understand the clinical context, review and validate your entire evaluation. It needs to be watertight. No holes.
Right. Now, let's say your device does make it to market. Success. But the work isn't over, is it? In fact, overlooking what comes next seems to be our 6th common mistake. Weak post-market surveillance, or PMS, planning. It often feels like an afterthought, something maybe you'll sort out later, but you're saying PMS is a core requirement under MDR, crucial for ongoing compliance, detecting emerging risks.
Yeah, stepping back for a second, PMS isn't just about reacting when something goes wrong. It's meant to be proactive risk management throughout the device's entire life on the market. For Class II devices, MDR specifically requires a proactive PMS plan. That's under Article 83. It might also require post-market clinical follow-up PMCF if needed to gather more data. And definitely periodic safety update reports, PSUs. Those are required every 2 years for Class I. Ignoring this, it can lead to really serious compliance issues down the line, potentially even forcing a recall or having your market access withdrawn.
So how do you make sure PMS is actually integrated effectively, not just, bolted on as some kind of annual exercise you have to do?
The key is integration. You need to integrate PMS directly into your quality management system, your QMS, right from the beginning. Actively collect real-world data. How is your device actually performing out there? Use that data to inform your CER updates, your risk assessments, and crucially, monitor relevant adverse event databases. You damned when it's fully functional national databases. Keep an eye on broader industry trends, too. It has to be an ongoing, continuous process. It's definitely not a one-time task or just a checkbox exercise.
Okay, finally we arrive at mistake number 7, delaying engagement with a notified body. This seems like it could completely derail your whole CE certification timeline. These bodies, they're gatekeepers, right? They audit and ultimately approve your Class IIa devices. So putting off that context sounds like a huge misstep. But is there any way a company could maybe, I don't know, proactively demonstrate readiness to a notified body to potentially shorten that queue beyond just saying hi early?
That's an excellent question. And it really speaks to the core of the problem here. Companies often just underestimate the capacity issues within the notified bodies. There are only so many, and they have limited slots. This causes significant scheduling delays. It's a real bottleneck. Starting those discussions early with them clarifies all the requirements, manages expectations up front, that saves time, avoids costly rework later. Plus, MDR explicitly mandates that quality management system audit for Class IIa devices. That needs to be scheduled into their very busy calendars.
Now, about shortening the queue. Well, you can't really jump the line. But conducting a thorough gap analysis before you even make that initial contact, that signals professionalism, it shows preparedness, it tells them that you're serious, you're organized, and that can certainly make all subsequent interactions much smoother.
Okay, so what's the really actionable takeaway then? How do you get them on board as smoothly and efficiently as possible? Right. First, identify a designated notified body early in your process, ideally even before your technical documentation is totally finalized. Second, conduct that thorough gap analysis before you reach out. Know exactly where your systems stand against their expectations. And third, be realistic. Allocate sufficient time, sufficient resources for the entire conformity assessment process. It's definitely not a quick rubber stamp exercise. Not anymore.
So what does all this mean for you listening in? Well, navigating CE Class IIa certification under MDR, it's clearly way more than just a paperwork exercise. It demands a strategic, really comprehensive approach, thinking about compliance, safety, performance altogether. By proactively avoiding these 7 common mistakes we've just outlined, you can significantly reduce your time to market. You can minimize those painful audit failures, and you can avoid that costly rework and those delays that, let's face it, directly hit your bottom line.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just to give you a quick recap of those 7 key takeaways today. First, understand the MDR requirements thoroughly. Don't forget the nuances and interpretations. Second, classify your product accurately right from the start. Use the rules. Get advice. Third, maintain comprehensive and current technical documentation. Think dynamic, cross-referenced if you can. Fourth, remember, don't rely on FDA approval alone. The EU MDR is its own distinct pathway. Fifth, develop a detailed, really evidence-based clinical evaluation report. Go beyond just surface-level data. Sixth, plan and implement effective, proactive post-market surveillance activities integrated into your QMS. And finally, number 7, engage your notified body as early as you possibly can in your development process.
Great summary. Now, considering all the complexities we've just unpacked here, how might understanding these certification pitfalls influence not just a single company's market strategy, but also perhaps the broader landscape of medical innovation itself, and maybe even patient access to important new technologies, something for you to mull over until our next deep dive.